What's going on, guys? Today's video is going to be a bit different than normal, probably a lot longer too. So, we have a three-game NBA slate tonight. I haven't done any research yet, and this is what I'm going to be doing in the video today. I got a feedback from one of you all in the VIPs. This is going to be a premium only video too, so I'm not going to make this public for everybody. I might after the fact, but at least for the current slate tonight, it's just for you guys. But basically, I had a feedback request. If you're in my Discord, there's a survey that I have in there that you can fill out and submit anything you want me to do for you or anything you want to see from me, because I do all this for you guys. I want this to be the best product that you can possibly have. So obviously, if you're paying money for it, I want you to get as much value as possible. But basically, the quest was saying, hey, I love your videos. I love seeing the picks that you're on. They're all really good and such, but you're always showing the plays you already found. Is there a chance that you could show us how you find these plays? So that's what I'm going to do today. We have a three-game slate. I haven't looked at a single thing. I can't even tell you who's playing. All I know is there's three games. Haven't looked at an injury report. I've done nothing. It's 2:30 afternoon. I've done nothing. But it's Thursday. We have Thursday Night Football. I focused on that for a bit. But basically, I use three websites for my process for NBA. Outlier.bet, which I always talk about on my videos and stuff. I use RotoWire, rotowire.com. There's just their starting lineup page. This just gives me an overview of all the injuries and stuff and the starting lineup for today. And you can kind of see like if there's anything you have to watch out for. Looks like on the slate today, we pretty much have clarity on most of the news for the most part. So that's good. We don't really have to worry about too much here. And then the other website I use is X, and it's just this Underdog NBA. This is just more a real-time update. I get a ping whenever they post a tweet, because it usually just shows you, hey, this player just got ruled out, and it's more up to the minute than you kind of get compared to on RotoWire and on Outlier, because Outlier too, they have the injury information on their lineup screen on the side and on the bottom here, but you get a bit more, just a top-level view on RotoWire. So basically, that's how I start my research process every day. I open up RotoWire. I just take a look at the teams playing. I try to gauge, what's going on with each team. You see, like Cleveland, they sat all their main guys yesterday, and Lonzo Ball was the main guy who played. And now you got Mitchell and Hunter and Mobley all playing, with Ball and Garland and Struth all out. So, I'm expecting them, Mitchell and like Hunter and Mobley, to take up a lot of the usage here. The Pacers, they're still a big mess just in general. They're generally a team that I've been avoiding this year. So something that I do, this is actually a good tip for you guys. But like if I see a team and they're just consistently like running a different starting lineup out there every single game, or their injury report is constantly filled with like a bunch of guys, and it's just like a rotation of stuff, and there's no consistency to it, I actually generally try to I barely look at the team, because if I'm looking for a trend, you're not really going to find a trend, over like the last 10 games of the same scenario when a team's constantly making all these moves. So like you'll rarely see me post bets on like the Pacers right now. The Nets are a team that I don't really generally do a lot on. Some of these injury-ridden teams I generally just avoid. Utah is one I avoid a lot when like they start sitting everybody. So that's just my preference there. I know what I don't know, and that's something you have to learn when going through this stuff. But basically, I start my process on RotoWire, looking at the injury news. Then I head over to Outlier here, and I sort depending on time of the year. So we're early on in the season. We're about 10 games in for most teams, maybe a little bit more, maybe less. Just depends on the team. So I'm still looking a little bit at last year's numbers for the most part, especially on teams who have the same guys as last year. Like the Cleveland stuff, they have mostly the same guys. Toronto's for the most part the same, but Brandon Ingram is different in there, and he's a high usage guy. Pacers are way different. The Suns are way different. No Durant. Hawks are without Trae Young. They're pretty different. And Utah, for the most part, they're kind of the same from last year, but. So it kind of just depends team by team. So like this Nickel Alexander Walker is going to show up a ton for his unders last year, but that's because, it was a different scenario last year. He was with Minnesota, so it doesn't even apply to this year's stats. So I have to look at this year's trends, but then I'm looking at this year's trends too. And it's like, okay, well, I got to look at games without Trae Young, and then it turns into a 3 out of 5 game sample size. And then something like that's just like a little bit too small for me. And you can see he's like right by this number every time. So, I don't know if you guys are going to gain a ton from this video, but I'll try my best to go through my process with you. Like I said, it's going to be pretty long, especially as I go through. But we'll see what I can do. I'll try to talk my way through it too. So like I'll look at this Donovan Mitchell under first half prop, and he's gone under 9 out of 10 games this year. And now I'll also look at last year, 73% of games last year. I'll look at the home games. It goes down to 65%. He had a big stretch here where he was doing well. This year, 3 out of 4 home games. I want to look at games like without Garland and just see how that compares. All 7 this year without Garland, all 7 out of 9 last year without him. So, I'm kind of just looking at like a little bit of everything. Like I'm looking at the games without Strus. He went under a lot, about 75% of the time at home without Strus. This first half, under 19.5 PRA it might be a play that I would consider. It's 18 on Prize Picks and 19.5 on Underdog Fantasy. So like this is a total no on Prize Picks if I'm going with the under, but it's tempting on Underdog Fantasy. We had a scenario like this the other day with Cade Cunningham where it was a 1.5 different and he just like went absolutely bonkers. I think this play with Mitchell's a solid play. He's gone under 9 out of 10 this year, 73% last year. It kind of concerns me. So like if he was on the road, I might like it a little bit more because it's 65% at home. It's probably around 80% on the road because it has to even out. But I don't mind this Mitchell play at all. So I'll kind of just add it here. And this is what I kind of go through. Like I look at these and I add a handful through and then I go back and I double check them and I only pick like my favorites. So I look at like the Dyson Daniels under first half. He's under 11 out of 12. Well, last year he went under about 59% of the time. But there's really not much of a sample without Trey. And like last year he went over 3 to 4 without Trey. I get it 6 out of 7 this year, but it's still too fresh. I'll get off these first half points though. I'll get onto like some regular props because not all of you guys have Prize Picks and Underdog Fantasy where you can just do the first half stuff. So we'll just scroll through here. Let's look at the 2025. The Pacers, they're kind of tough to read. So I've generally been ignoring them for the most part because the rotations have been so weird. And I just don't fully understand them enough. I'll look at this Okongwu play. We see how he's gone under in all these games. I want to look at the games where Porzingis played, and then maybe games that Trey too. So that's a solid 6 out of 6 trend. I'll go and look at the minutes. Pretty steady between 24 and 26 minutes or so outside of that one game. Last year, obviously Porzingis wasn't with the team, but 3 out of 4 without Trey last year. This Okongwu under's a solid play to consider. We'll filter for games, between like 20 and 30 minutes, maybe 25 and 30 minutes or so. Just because generally that's where he's going to end up, maybe 24. That's around where he'll end up most of the time. And, he went under about 3/4 of the time last year, almost all the road games last year. This year he's on under 6 out of 8, 3 out of 5 road games. So solid play in Okongwu. I'll mark this down and just, this is how I go through. I just go through and I look at them all and I check off like some of the ones that look really good to me. Sometimes a lot do, sometimes none do. It just kind of depends on the day. I can look at this Royce O'Neal play, but Jalen Green is out, and Green wasn't with the team last year, so we really only have these 12 games this year. If I filter for games without Green, it's a 10-game sample size. So O'Neal went over this number in 8 out of 10. So that's solid. Home games, all 5 home games. I want to look at his minutes. Minutes are pretty steady. Now I'd want to see if he went over this number just because he was just shooting the ball great, or if it was just being very efficient or just shooting the ball a lot. Like this Utah game, he shot the ball a ton. That's why he went over. Same with the Memphis game. But then like some of these recent games, 5 out of 9, 4 out of 7, those are really efficient games. 4 out of 6 to go over. 5 out of 10 is okay. It's nothing crazy. 4 out of 11, that's not great. 4 out of 8, that's okay. So it was kind of a mix of being efficient plus the volume. But look at the games like with Booker. I don't know if Booker's missed anything this year. He hasn't. Grayson Allen, he's back. He hasn't really missed anything this year. Yeah, I'm just kind of click through and try to find like if there's anything that affects these lines or not. And I get a big list of players like this. Like I'll mark off this O'Neal over 10.5 on Prize Picks. On Underdog, it's probably over. Underdog's got it at 11.5. So I'll mark this as an over on Prize Picks just to check it again. But this is kind of how I go through things. I just kind of look through the player cards. I try to look at the minutes. I try to look at the injury situations that go along with it. Like I'm definitely gonna bet that Donovan Mitchell under, and I'll probably bet this Okongwu under too. Not 100% convinced on the Royce O'Neal just yet. And just kind of go through the guys, and I'm not like randomly picking these guys, but I kind of am in a sense. I'm trying to pick guys who were in a very similar situation to last year, or some team rotations that I just generally understand for the most part. Now, out of these 6 teams today, I can tell you right now, these 6 teams are really not teams that I feel like I am 100% confident in just yet. You could do Toronto, but then Baji's out, so it changes things. And like Cleveland, you have these other guys out. So it's tough. It's definitely a tough scenario or situation here. Nurkic, he's been a guy I've been looking at recently. His line's 25.5 on the PRA. He went over last game, over for a couple games. You see his minutes though. It really just depends. Like if he's gonna get 30 minutes, he has a chance to go over. But even then, like it's not easy for him to go over on his PRA. And I generally start at the PRA because that kind of shows everything, and then I'll go like, I'll look see like, okay, well, what's his rebound number? His rebound number is 10.5, 11 on Prize Picks. That's a high number. You could look at the matchup. I'm just not the type of person who likes to look at the matchup. I might just try to figure out the opportunity here. We'll look at games without Kessler. See, I want to see what his minutes have looked like in the games without Kessler this season. And it's been pretty erratic. We 30 minutes a couple of times, 20 to 25, 19 there. I'll look at the fouls, be like, okay, was the 19 minutes because he got into foul trouble? And it wasn't, but then I'll look at the game and the score, and it's like, okay, well, Minnesota won by 40. So he obviously sat the entire fourth quarter because of a blowout. So these are just kind of things you have to consider. Same thing with this Charlotte game. They got blown out by 23 points. He only played 22 minutes. I guarantee you he sat the majority of the end of the game there. And then this Minnesota one, it might have just been a matchup thing, but he went 2 of 11 from the field. So, I mean, if he went 5 out of 11, he probably would have almost gone over this number. He would have actually. He would have been 25, so just under it. And that's not even asking for much. But these are just the things you have to consider. You have to figure out why these players went over or under in a certain situation and kind of what led to it. Yes, he played 30 minutes, but why did he play 19 minutes here? Was it because of foul trouble? Was it because of the score? Why did he go under this game when he played 25 minutes? Well, he shot 2 of 11. So these are just all the things that go through my head as I'm going through everything. Like I said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to find like an official pick for you guys as I'm talking through things here, because it's kind of tough to multitask like that. But I can easily do like the parlay fillers for you. So the parlay fillers, I just adjust my filters a bit here. I only look at overs. I adjust the odds to -137 because that's what the Goblin line on Prize Picks is. And then I have to just exclude out some of these other books like Hard Rock, Sleeper, and Underdog, and I'm only looking at Prize Picks. And then this is where I'll look at like last 20 games in 2024 and this year and all this stuff. And like Isaiah Collier is a good one. He's actually got over this number in the 3 games he played this year. Very erratic minutes, 26, 16, and 26. He's off a day of rest. He's a guy last year where we were taking his assist numbers like crazy during the stretch here. This is a stretch of like, I don't know, 40 games, probably 50 games or so. Probably like 45 games to 50 games in a row of him going over this 9.5 points and assist number. But like last year, if you look at his minutes, he was playing and generally playing between 26 and 33 minutes a game. This year, it's been erratic. He had the 26, and he had the 16, and he had the 27. But this was the first leg of a back-to-back. I expected him to sit a bit more so they could play him more in the second game. It's usually going to be one or the other on the first or second leg of a back-to-back that a player is going to get docked on minutes. But this Collier over 9.5 points and assists just makes sense. especially with just he's gonna get back in the rotation. You also have to see like, was anybody missing in these games? Like, did Keontae George sit in one of these games? No, he didn't. So you want to look at these kind of things too. You have to understand, what's going on in the situation here, what's causing this to happen. So this Collier 9.5 points and assists, I'll probably play that as a parlay filler. Let's keep scrolling here. I'll try to find one more for you guys, and then I'll get out of here. Brandon Ingram, obviously new team this year. He's gone over in 10 out of 11 games. The one game he didn't go over, doesn't really look like it was because of any reason other than just him not getting what he needed, which happens. Like, it's not always going to be, it's because he didn't get minutes or a foul trouble. Like, sometimes they just don't get what they need. They just don't perform like we want them to. So I'd probably skip this Ingram. I think probably, can't really look at last year's stats because it was a completely different team. You can look at games without Agbaji, but it's only been 2 games and it really doesn't affect him too much. I mean, if you want to press it, you could go with this prop, but I generally try to avoid like rebounds and assists for non-big men because a little bit less upside there. We'll keep scrolling here. Maybe we'll look at last year's numbers. I avoid over 0.5 lines all the time. I don't want to bet on people making 1 basket. And I also generally don't like to bet on people coming off the bench. I generally only like to bet players who are starters. Keep scrolling through here, see what we could find. Let's go back to the last 20. See, I just constantly just go through and I just try to find good scenarios that I like. I generally ignore steals and blocks. Look at just this year in general. I mean, the Collier, like I said, the Collier is probably the one I'm going to go with. Connell, maybe, but he's only played the 1 game. Dylan Brooks, that Sun situation's like a little weird. He's only played a few games this year too. It's just not a night where you're gonna find a ton. You know what I mean? I mean, we could look at the Scotty Barnes PRA maybe. And over this number, 83% of games last year, 87% on the road. And, 6 out of 7 road games this year, but he did just barely go over this. And like, if I'm taking an alternate line, I want to see him smashing this number. I don't want to see him just barely going over. So that's a skip. Markkanen's been pretty good this year. Let's see. I don't know if I'm gonna find another one for you guys. Like I said, you're not always gonna find things you're looking for. Quickly has been pretty good on the PRA, I think. Yeah, he's been all right. Even then, he's not smashing the numbers. See, I want to see people going way over this number. Like the Austin Reeves or like the Franz Wagner, where it's like, they're averaging 35 and they're giving us 25. I want to see them smashing the number. And it doesn't seem like on this slate you really have too much of that. You could look at the stars, which is something you can do too. Like, you could look at just Devin Booker, but I don't know. Like, sometimes you're just not going to find things, and that's okay. I mean, the Brandon Ingram assists, but I generally don't like just taking assists because you're relying on other players to make their shots. So I like to do like a points and assists. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to force anything, but I think you guys kind of get the idea at this point. So like if I'm wrapping up my bets for tonight here, you guys already have seen all these. These are just football ones, but let me scroll to basketball. So like if I was like, what I'm doing now is like, I have these 3 regular lines and then the 1 parlay filler. I would go back in each one and I would just be like, okay, how much do I really love this play? And am I comfortable enough to put money on it? And so like I would go back to the Royce O'Neal and I would kind of look through again, like, okay, 10 out of 12, when it was averaging 12.8. Is this because he was shooting well, or is it because he's shooting a lot? And I just kind of go through the same process again because, is it because he's making 3-pointers? Is he just getting hot from three? Like you gotta account for these kind of things. And quite honestly, I probably wouldn't take this Royce O'Neal points prop. I'm just not a guy who generally likes to take just points if it's not an alternate line. So I'd probably skip the O'Neal play, but I am gonna go with this Mitchell first half line, even though it could burn me, but I don't really care. If it burns me, it burns me. And then I'm going to definitely go with that Collier alternate line. And I'll probably go with this Okongwu under too, even though he is a guy with a lot of upside, but he needs to shoot like lights out to go over. You see at all these other games where he, in 10 out of 11, he went 4 to 10 this game, but he needed 14 rebounds to get there. Like he needs to go off in one category to go over. And I like the spot for him to go under this number tonight. So Okongwu will be definitely a play. And then obviously the Collier. And then when it comes to making my slips, I just do a random, man. Like honestly, the best way you should probably do it is a random number generator. Decide if you want to do a 2 or 3 leg first. Like look at the $2. So I look at Prize Picks and Underdog, and I look and see which one has the better number. So like obviously Mitchell has the 19.5 on Underdog, so there's zero chance I'm playing him on Prize Picks. So I need to have one of these other ones on Underdog Fantasy. And in this instance, I would try to see if that Collier line is on there. I'm not sure if it is or not, but if it is, I would combine it with Mitchell. But if he's not on there, I would just combine it with Okongwu. So I'm pretty sure Okongwu is going to be on there. Yeah, he is. So I would just do the Mitchell Okongwu on Underdog, and then I would go over the Prize Picks. So I'm going to want action on this Collier line. I would throw the Collier line with Okongwu and double dip on the Okongwu a bit. Or I might just combine the Collier with like some NFL, or if something were to pop up later, this line's not going to move. Like they're not going to take this away unless the injury happens to one of his teammates. And at this point, you kind of know what's going on. So I would wait until I can find something to pair this with. But if I desperately can't, I'll just throw another unit on Okongwu. Or I could maybe go with this Royce O'Neal play or try to find another one that's strong, or like another parlay fill or something that I like, and just combine it with it. But that's kind of how I look at things and how I handle my combinations. But if you had a slew of plays, like, my football, I'll have like 10 to 14 bets on a week, right? Put them all into a random generator, decide if you want to do 2 or 3 mans with them, and do them by sight. Put them in a random generator, have them spit out the outputs for you, and just put a unit on each of them and live with the results. Sorry that this video is a bit longer, 23 minutes or so, but this isn't more like a just for tonight thing. This is more something that you can watch a few times over and over again and try to understand yourself, what I'm doing here and how I'm looking at these plays. And hopefully it helps you guys in making these decisions yourself. Obviously you need a tool like Outlier to do this kind of, to do my style of research. But, this is just a full candid look on my process. So, feel free to reach out if you have any questions, post them in Discord, send me a DM or something. Don't hide from the feedback form too. Just submit whatever you want me to do, and I'll do it. I'll try to do more of these in the future, maybe a little bit more condensed where I actually have like a little bit of an idea. But you guys wanted me start to finish, and this essentially is start to finish. So yeah, hopefully you guys like this. Thanks, guys.